ESD Spotlight Series. We're in week 2 of the Spotlight Series, and we're delighted to have Ulster University here with us today, who will be presenting a diverse range of ESD practice across the university. So just a reminder for people that today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be available early next week. Please keep your microphones on mute if at all possible. The link is there for where the recording is going to be, so it's the same link that you registered on. Also, to highlight to people that we have ESD case studies, an open call for that, and also we have an open educational resources call for people, and the 2 links are there. So not all of you will have access to chat, so you can post any questions in the chat if you have access, but also in the Q&A if you have access, and we'll pose those to the team today at the end. We should have 5 to 6 to 7 minutes at the end for any sort of Q&A. So we're delighted you could join us, and I'm going to hand you over to Amanda, who's going to take it from here.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. I'm Dr. Amanda Platt. I'm Ulster University's Education for Sustainable Development Lead, and I've been in this role since 2019. Thanks so much to Mark for having this opportunity to share our approach to ESD at Ulster. We've included some illustrative case studies today, and I hope all of what we've included in this 1-hour slot will perhaps provide you all with some new ideas or directions, both for those of you who are leading ESD at other institutions and will be at different, different times, I suppose, along that journey, but also for individual researchers and indeed educators who want to embed ESD in their own practice with their own students. So just by way of a very quick outline of what we're going to cover, I'm going to do a very concise overview of ESD at Ulster along that 6-year timeline. One of our new kind of a focus of today is really a new area of ESD work, which is around integrating research and teaching with and for sustainability. We'll also have an overview of our internal research teaching Nexus Toolkit. And then we have 2 illustrative case studies that are both ESD case studies, but interestingly also incorporate discipline research into teaching that is with, has that all-important sustainability strand. And hopefully we'll have time, a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. We have 5 presenters today. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you'll see our email addresses are included here, and we'll each introduce ourselves as we go through, but colleagues from across different areas of the university. A little bit about me before I get into ESD at Ulster. And the reason why I want to give a little bit about me is because my background, my experiences, extensive experiences in HE have really informed, guided and underpinned the ESD approach at Ulster. So I'm a senior lecturer in higher education practice, so I work in the field of academic development. ESD is one part of my role, and I have many roles within as an academic developer. Any of you who are in that type of role know what I mean. So I don't just do ESD, I do a lot of other things, but I have been proactive in trying to incorporate ESD into my other roles. And hopefully that will come across as I talk through particularly the next slide. Very usefully, my background is in geography, environmental science and geographical information systems. I spent the first 10 years of my career in research, working on a number of research projects across 3 of our 4 faculties within Ulster. And I now have about 15 years in addition to that in academic development. And one particular area of my research as an academic developer has been around, how do we engage that critical mass of educators with learning and teaching with professional development? And ESD obviously falls within that category of learning and teaching professional development. So the outcomes and my learning as a result of that research has informed, guided and underpinned the approach at Ulster. And indeed, my leadership of ESD. So way back in 2019, the aim was to explicitly embed effective education for sustainable development across all of our disciplines at Ulster. with particular reference to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I have been very, well, I've tried with some difficulty to summarise 6 years of work on a single slide here. So let's see how that goes. I've also included, along with the timeline for ESD work, some really important internal and also external developments and drivers that have really helped us along our way, given further impetus along that 6-year journey. But if I start on the left-hand side here with the ESD timeline, when I started to think about this, what was happening simultaneously was the development of our integrated curriculum design framework, and my colleague Colette Murphy was working on that. And that included a number of curriculum priorities, such as inclusivity, digital skills, and so on. And so there was an opportunity for, because we were at the development stage, to bring ESD into that framework. That framework is used by Ulster educators to support and guide them in the design and the development of their curriculum, mainly in preparation for validation and revalidation of programmes as part of what was then a 5-year cycle. So our initial point for this was really embedding ESD in our enhancement of both academic quality, but also quality assurance processes from the beginning. What that meant at the time, and still is the case, was that staff had to explicitly articulate in the revalidation document how they were embedding ESD in their curriculum. So, you know, that was where my mind was on how can we get this critical mass to engage, and we're not just relying on those people who have a particular passion or enthusiasm for sustainability. In support of that then, in 2020, and it still continues, where I provide these bespoke ESD workshops, and Kieran, who will be talking in a few minutes, joined Ulster about a year ago and is also supporting me with this work now. So a range of bespoke workshops at different levels. So, you know, from individual support through to programme teams, school, faculty, and right up to institution-wide webinars. Resources have emerged out of that, but also those really, some of, as we have today, those illustrative case studies, and actually presentation of those case studies, I feel, has been really impactful in helping staff to see what does ESD actually look like within a module, within practice, what does it look like for our students. I'm also course director of our PG Cert in Higher Education practice, which is for UU educators, but predominantly new educators to Ulster, and that's Advanced HEA accredited at Descriptor 2 of the Professional Standards Framework. We've engaged since 2022 then with the SOS UK Responsible Futures whole institution change programme, which is entirely about embedding ESD across all aspects of the student experience. And I'm absolutely delighted that along with Trinity College Dublin, Ulster University has earned Responsible Futures accreditation, and that came through in January of this year. Other things that have happened along the way, in particular, the development of a UU graduate attributes framework. Now, I wasn't directly involved in that. However, the sustainability competencies informed, guided, and underpinned the development of that framework. So it ties in very well with the Sustainable Development Goals framework. Similarly, we had then updates to our module handbook template, which is that student-facing document that we use across the university. That was being updated, so we took again the opportunity to embed an explicit, both an SDG section within that for students, but also a section for the graduate attributes, and they appear together in that. We've embedded 2 additional ESD related questions in the national, so the Ulster set of the National Student Survey questions. Our learning and teaching principles and qualities emerged last May of 2024, and that has led to this new piece of work that Kieran is going to talk about in a moment. We've engaged for the first time this year in November with the SOS UK, that National Sustainability Skills Survey, and got a huge nearly 750 responses from Ulster students. That, along with the report that comes through as part of Responsible Futures accreditation, will really inform our future planning around ESD, because a lot has been achieved. There has been a lot of progress, but we're certainly not at the end, and there are many more areas, I suppose, that we want to explore going forward. In terms of those internal and external drivers, I don't have time to go through all of those, but I just want to pick up in particular our institutional strategy, which came out 3 years after I started this work, with sustainability really, clearly a strategic priority. It's also a priority both in research and in learning and teaching. And one of the key resources that I find has been really helpful in those workshops that I provide for staff are the Quality Assurance Agency subject benchmark statements, because they now have, since 2022, an explicit sustainability section. And I think the emergence of those has helped our staff to see that ESD is not just an Ulster priority, it's a sector priority, but it's also a priority in my subject, in my discipline as well. So lots of really valuable developments there along the way. And just finally, before I hand over to Kieran, a couple of snapshots here from that, our module handbook template that I mentioned. And you can see we have those explicit sections sitting together for both the SDGs and the graduate attributes, so that it's very clear for both our educators how their curriculum aligns, because they have to identify the mapping themselves, but also, more importantly, for the students, so that it's very clear to them. So that was my very concise overview of ESD at Ulster, and there'll hopefully be time for questions at the end. But for now, I'll hand over to Kieran.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So hi everyone, so I'm Kieran Higgins. I'm a lecturer in higher education practice. As Amanda said, I've recently joined Ulster University. I've been here a year now. Previously it was Queen's University Belfast before that for about 10 years. And my disciplinary background is I'm an environmental psychologist, and I've taught and led programs on interdisciplinary sustainability studies throughout my career. I'm also a visiting professor and senior expert in ESD at the United Nations University, and do lots of lovely interesting work with UNESCO. So I was really drawn to this role because of the focus on ESD and Ulster's general attitude towards sustainability. So delighted to be here today talking with you all. And Amanda wanted me to give a very quick intro to the idea of the research teaching nexus, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. So research-informed teaching, research-integrated teaching, or the terminology that we're using, the research teaching nexus, RTN, that basically refers to the range of ways in which students engage with research during their degree programme, and even beyond that, including how research is communicated to the literature and how they work with that, how we as academic university staff share our research activity and our findings with students, and in fact the research projects that they undertake themselves, whether those are very, very small projects all the way to larger dissertations and thesis. And as you know, it's very much a hallmark of higher education. That's what distinguishes it from other sectors, is the integration of research with our teaching. And here at Ulster, Amanda alluded to the new learning, teaching, student experience principles and qualities. One of those is working in a research-informed way, and the other is sustainability. And what we realised was there was a really key opportunity here to bring those together to achieve aims in both areas. We recognise that the importance of the latest research for tackling sustainability issues, but also as well for our students to be sustainability champions. They need to be active consumers of research, be able to interrogate research, be able to critically analyse it, and also as well to engage in that embedded research that takes place every day as a professional. And we also realised there's lots of amazing and exciting sustainability research going on at Ulster, which you'll hear from our colleagues later, and much more beyond that. And could this be a way to engage our students with sustainability, even if they're maybe not in a discipline where it's on their radar? Could we draw this to their attention? So our key aim within this work stream has been to bring together colleagues all over the university, which is our first opportunity to do so here today, and to a wider audience, to showcase how the RTN has been used in practice as a way to develop students as sustainability champions. So I'd like to now introduce Professor Raymond Bond, Professor of Human Computer Systems, who was one of the authors of the toolkit that was developed some years ago, to tell us a little bit more about it and how it's been the basis for this work.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about research teaching integration and my own personal experience. So we developed a toolkit at Ulster to be prompts for academics to consider the kind of activities that they can integrate into their teaching to help embed their research into their teaching and see value from doing that. We did have some funding from Ulster to develop the toolkit, and you can see the co-authors or co-investigators here listed. In my own experience, I remember as an undergraduate student not realizing that lecturers did scientific research or did research, but I think it was because maybe in my initial experience nobody really talked about it. Unless we talk about our research and integrate it, then some students may never know. Before I go on to talk about that, you can see two references here. One is a reference to our research that we've done regarding research teaching integration, and one is a reference to our toolkit, which is also available in PDF if you want to access the full toolkit in PDF. I did come across a great initiative way before we developed the toolkit from memory, and I thought this was brilliant. It was at UCL, where they have an induction activity where a student, for example, might read the profile of a particular academic. They might choose an academic, they maybe read some of their papers, read their profile, and then perhaps they can then interview that academic about their research. And so imagine just how much embedded our research would be if that was the experience of undergraduate students in the first few weeks, where they read the profile papers or a couple of papers from a selected academic and interview them. I think that would be a very valuable exercise to try to ground the teaching experience with research. For me, research is really about asking scientific questions, and I know that's a very simple thing to say, but it took me a long time to realize this. But then I also realized that how many questions do we actually write down? And I can, reflect on my PhD experience. I'm pretty sure I didn't write too many research questions down before selecting one. And, marathon runners don't just go and run a marathon. They practice and build up to that distance. And really, now I want to try and build a habit of writing research questions. And the idea here is that when we're teaching is that we provide opportunities for students to ask questions, because perhaps in my own academic experience or education experience, often we're trained to answer questions, but not necessarily trained to ask them or assessed on how we ask questions or the quality of our questions, etc. So of course we do need more inquiry-based learning and less fact-based memorization. And the benefits of integrating your research into teaching are obvious. You're going to foster a community of scholars, the transferable skills regarding writing, presenting, analyzing data, carrying out experiments. All of those skills are certainly transferable. There are different ways of integrating our research into teaching. There's the research-led approach, where we maybe design our modules and curriculum in that the curriculum and topics reflect the research interests of our school and indeed our research interests. There's research tutored, where students read and critically appraise papers in the classroom. There's research orientated, where students learn about research methods and so on. Then there's research based, where students actually carry out their own experiments and write their own papers and use the research methods. And then there's research teaching, which is perhaps an approach I don't have experience with, which is where students teach more junior peers about research and research skills. From one sense, yes, I have invited PhD researchers to give guest talks and so on. So maybe that's more a research teaching based approach. I would want to say at this point, my own personal experience with research teaching integration is that, yes, it's been valuable to talk about my research in lectures, but actually I've also found it valuable to share my lecture slides with PhD researchers because very often if I'm talking about research methods in the classroom, how I talk about those research methods, I hope, are very clear and straightforward, and therefore those slides become very useful training material for the PhD researchers as well. So we did, alongside developing a toolkit, we did carry out a survey, and you can see the paper here referenced, and you can see the research questions, such as we asked the question, what are the different approaches to a research training nexus, and how important do educators perceive these different approaches to be? So we want to understand which approach do academics prefer in terms of integrating research into teaching, and also what activities are commonly used to integrate teaching and research responsibilities, because different academics might take different approaches in how they integrate their research. This is the demographic of our survey. And you can see the benefits that were specified by the academics, the benefits that they perceive when integrating research and teaching. The obvious benefits being transferable competencies, right? At the top, you can see a lot of people would have acknowledged that. And of course, integrating real world challenges into the classroom, of course, that's a key benefit. But if you look on down, you can see there's other benefits, such as the benefit of staff explaining research in the classroom. Why is that a benefit? Well, when you're teaching about your research, I think you have to fully understand it and make it clear and coherent and eloquent. And so it allows us to really distill our research at the fundamental level. For example, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if I were given 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. So here what I'm saying is that by teaching about your research, I think it allows you to spend a lot of time really thinking and distilling down the research questions and analysis that you've done. Okay, so here was a question in the survey, about how often each approach is taken in the research teaching nexus. So you can see that the common approach for academics is to teach students about research methods. Okay, another common approach is where students carry out their own research, which is great. But you can see that the less common approaches, the less common approaches, they're actually still really important, and maybe we need to spend more time on that. That is, allowing students to discuss research papers in the classroom and actually designing modules that reflect our research interests. So these results are related to another question about how often these different activities are carried out in our teaching. Of course, we promote academic referencing, etc. They're very common. But if you look on down the list, you'll see perhaps a slightly less common practice is aligning student assignments to our research interests. Now, in my own experience from previous modules, for example, when teaching about computer graphics, I would have talked a lot about simulation-based training in healthcare and medicine, because that was one of my research interests, and so I would have tried to encourage that, as a domain for the assignment. Also, when teaching data science and machine learning, most of my examples of my teaching are healthcare data analytics or machine learning in healthcare. So, though you start to see those kind of domains come through in the assignments, which I've found very useful in terms of reading about and seeing the kind of results that students come up with. This is the remainder of the list. You can see that surprisingly, less frequently we have guest research presentations from other academic staff or guest talks from PhD researchers. I think we need to encourage more of that. It can help the PhD researcher, but it also can help the students in the classroom. I also would have thought that we would deliver research presentations that we've delivered at research conferences. I thought we would deliver those type of presentations more often in the classroom. We spend a lot of time preparing research presentations for research conferences. Why not talk about them in the classroom? And in my own personal experience, I've been, encouraged to see that students actually are really interested in what we do in terms of research. And maybe that's because the type of enthusiasm that comes across when we talk about our research. And if you look on down the list, you'll see that less frequently we include students in our research ideas. We don't really often partner with students and to develop new research questions. I think this is something I personally need to explore. I would love to have kind of a research question workshop or to crowdsource research questions and rank them and grade them. I think something like that would actually be really useful in terms of promoting scientific inquiry and also helping us identify new novel research questions in our domain. What was interesting from the survey is that research is less frequently integrated into first year of undergraduate programs. That might sound somewhat obvious, but maybe we need to revise that, and maybe research needs to be integrated from the first few weeks. Take the UCL example that I mentioned earlier, where students have to perhaps read papers in the profile of an academic and interview them in the first few weeks of study. So we need to start to consider how we bring research in from the start of our programs. So these are the kind of features in our toolkit. You can go and check it out, so I'll not talk too much about it. I really like checklists. So if you need a checklist to help you consider how you integrate research into your teaching, there's a checklist for designing modules. There's a checklist that might be useful for revalidation. The most useful bit of the toolkit for me is the list of activities, because the list of activities act as prompts to give you new ideas or new research activities that you can integrate into teaching. It is also available in PDF and on a website version. We did do focus groups. You can see the kind of quotes here. You can see that people thought it would be useful for revalidation and so on. And just on that, we did adapt the toolkit for use in revalidation, and you can see the start of this kind of checklist or toolkit that we used. So each module coordinator was given a document, and then they would look through the different types of research teaching integration approaches. They would look at the example activities, and then they would consider how they integrate that or could integrate that into their new module as part of revalidation. In my own personal experience, in one of our modules, we have group work where students get into a group and they identify an open data set that they want to analyze, that they agree to analyze, and they co-author a paper, and that's a very useful research activity in teaching. One of the main reasons for that approach, that is having the group select their own open data set, whether it be in the finance domain or healthcare domain, doesn't matter. It's domain agnostic. They can select the domain, is to encourage that enthusiasm, which aligns with one of my favorite quotes to this day, which is, nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And so the point is that you select a data set that you're really enthusiastic about analyzing, and hopefully that encourages the interest in the assignment. Okay, and a slightly separate topic, in our programs I teach, well, one particular topic I teach is emerging and advanced topics in artificial intelligence, and we talk about AI ethics, etc., and also sustainability. For example, did you know that a single ChatGPT query uses 100 times more energy than a single Google search? Okay, and you can see that training a very basic large language model such as BERT without hyperparameter training, etc., was estimated to require as much energy as a trans-American flight. Okay, and a BERT-based model is a basic large language model. You might have heard of ChatGPT. BERT is another model. Okay, but sustainability means more than just energy use. So we have this initiative, I think it's called Masters Innovation Projects, and the idea behind this initiative is that there are lots of master students doing dissertations, and yeah, students can pick their own topics. generally speaking, in the higher education sector, and that might be fine. But why not have topics from companies or it could be from consultants and hospitals, whoever propose research topics and research questions, and perhaps master's students could then, focus on some of those challenges. And the idea is that you're maximizing the effort towards particular needs that could have real world impact. Also, source code in computing, sorry, that's my domain, but source code is also related to sustainability, because if you write source code that's readable, reusable, coherent, comprehensive, and updatable, then it can be repurposed by other coders and other computer scientists and others. So I think sustainability goes beyond just energy use. Also, open data is one area that's obviously very important. Once people make data open on websites such as Kaggle, that allows anybody to download that data set and analyze it. So that reduces the duplication of effort, because if you don't make data open, then there could be lots of different centers around the world collecting the same data for the same purpose. For example, a heart disease data set on Kaggle has, well, the last time I checked was, over 500,000 views. Now, if views mean downloads, then imagine having 500,000 data scientists analyze your data set, and imagine the impact that would make on policy and practice around the world. We also teach about AI ethics, as I mentioned. One example here is around AI fairness. For example, it's important that an algorithm performs at the same level across different demographic groups, and there's well-known case studies in that area, such as the Compass algorithm, which was used in the US to give a risk score for the likelihood of somebody reoffending, which can be used perhaps by a judge to consider the sentencing, and it was seen to be discriminatory. So you can read more about the Compass algorithm and its case study if you want. Hopefully I didn't go over time, Amanda. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much for that, Raymond. Okay, thank you. Pilar. I'm going to introduce Pilar. So our first of our two illustrative case studies, Professor Pilar Fernandez Ibanez from our School of Engineering. So over to you, Pilar. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. So I hope that I can stick in the time and provide my personal experience on how I'm teaching a module called Environmental Engineering. I'm professor in the School of Engineering. I'm going to say very briefly who am I and what is my research and why my research really fits so well in this module, and how for me it's nearly impossible to detach the teaching from the research, because for me it's practically impossible to discern that, right? I wanted to minimize this. I don't know. Yes. Well, I'm professor of environmental engineering. I'm member of the Royal Irish Academy. I didn't want to say this like a list of merits, even if it looks like that. I wanted to say with this little slide that I'm a very active researcher. I have a lot of experience in environmental engineering, in clean technologies, solar energy, etc. And my motto to be an academic is to be a very active, very happy, enthusiastic researcher. When you translate all of that to the classroom, the students vibrate with you, right? So I think it's very important to being able to show what you love and what you are enthusiastic about, that is your research in the class. And of course, if you have the privilege to teach such a close topic, such a close discipline, you're lucky, but not necessarily has to be the case of having to teach exactly what you do your researching, because your methods, your transversal skills, and all these broad, ideas are transferable to many other modules. So I'm module coordinator of environmental engineering, and also module coordinator of engineering mathematics. I'm also take part in one of the most important committees on climate change and environmental sciences of the Royal Irish Academy. So that means I'm very much up to date with the influence on the advocates of environmental protections and climate change. So very, very much into the activities that are happening in terms of influencing teaching, but also research in Ireland. And in relation to my research, my area is water research. So by degree, I'm a physicist, but by research, I'm more chemical engineering oriented. So my background is very multidisciplinary. I have worked with microbiology, with physics, with solar radiation, with energy. So I have an extensive career, and that helps me a lot to try to wear the shoes of students that try to understand sometimes very complicated things that are put together in this module, right? And this photograph just show how you build reactors to treat water with solar energy. So this is a little bit of flavor of the kind of research I do. And I've been active for more than 25 years. But if I count well, I'm sure it's more. I have also a lot of collaborations internationally with European countries, Latin America, Asia, Africa. So also being able to think about the engineering perspective from many different social, cultural, and economic contexts that will translate to the classroom is unavoidable, right? So all of this vision will be shown if you really give yourself the opportunity to let research to really permeate into your classes. So the approach for teaching and learning in this module is research-led, research-oriented, research-tutored. Why? Because it's focused on innovation and sustainability underpinned by the state-of-the-art technologies and research. I feel very familiar and confident, as Raymond said. If you're teaching something where you feel very on the ball, very with a lot of depth in there, I mean, obviously you're gonna give a better insight to the students about that. Also, in this module, the learning experience is based on current real-world environmental issues. For example, the Lough Neagh pollutions or contamination in the air, any real case study that have been recently published. All of these real-life scenarios are taken into consideration around energy, around waste, and around environment. I also give the opportunity to the students to comment on what Raymond was saying about the amount of energy consuming electronics and social networks and all of this communication in the through the mobile. So the specific objectives of this module are focused on knowing the environmental damage, always within the frameworks of the SDGs. So all of them become more or less important, some more than others, but all of them come to the class quite often. Also, the technologies and innovations that we can use to monitor pollution or to control environmental damage or environmental improvement, and also sustainable ways to produce energy, but also how to integrate sustainability in producing software elements, hardware elements, or any kind of products or commercial activity. So it's gonna really occur everywhere in your area of engineering. So in this teaching method, we have the traditional lectures and the traditional exam, but partially we have a team project assignment where the students focus on a clean technology of their choice. They will have 8 weeks to work on that, and they will do their own research. To do that, of course, they are going to be confused if you don't give them enough guidance. So I give them some introduction lectures, short lectures to really give them insight into some specific concepts and the way of measuring things or the way of using the information. So all of this is explained in class in very short sessions, and the students meet with their team and do their own research using the library. Sometimes they bring on board, and I tell them, please bring local business, local industry experience, like how to reduce water use in a processing industry. I mean, it's closer than we think. Could be any sustainability. It doesn't have to be all solar energy or wind energy. It could be any kind of process can have this approach. And this is what I tell them, be open mind. And this is where they start to develop cohesive work, critical analysis, and deeper understanding on the area of research. Then they have to deliver a report where the writing skills is something that is challenging for them because they are writing from scratch on something that they are not so familiar. It's not the typical textbooks writing, right? And also they have to deliver an oral presentation that is peers assessed. And this is the marking scheme. These two tables here is how the students mark their peers when they are listening, because they went through the process of making their own project. They are very critical. I mean, it surprises me how insightful they are, how they recognize the value of other students presenting. So we become really tough or really positively evaluating and giving the credit to the peers' work. And then the question and answer session after their presentation, that is usually 20 minutes, it's very interesting because some of them have really good questions, right? And you see also the individual contributions and give the lecturer the possibility of really assess very quick and give quick feedback. And it's very dynamic. It's really, they like it. So for the students, it's a very nice way to really draw their own learning path, right? It's not very much to the typical constraints of the lectures, and that excites not only me as a lecturer, but of course to them, and that's the most important, right? Also, they can develop the critical thinking, the teamwork, the initiative. The initiative is very important because at the beginning they feel a bit like confused because it's a bit of a challenge, have this kind of assessment. And of course, the research skills with the having in context the sustainability in the background and the SDGs all the time, right? The students' feedback is positive, always positive every year. They used to say things like this, and here I have quoted some of their comments. The team project permitted to learn in a different way, being more independent, having an open attitude, engaging more than just going to class. That is, in principle, more boring. I like that my feedback is considered, my feedback to peers, and so all of this is very interesting. I also found that the engagement is always nearly very close to 100%, so that you don't have like nobody disengaged in this activity. They say it's part of my assessment, but at the same time, I think they really love it. And they also, when they distribute the work they are doing, everyone can negotiate with their teams what they can do better. So it's also part of that teamwork. And also, I have observed, I was looking at the student reports from the first year that we did this, and the last year that we did the same module. The word sustainability and SDGs has increased from 3 times per report to 8 times per report. So it is coming naturally in their jargon as engineers, and they are engineers of all kinds. This is an optional module taken by 5 courses of engineering. And I was quite like, well, something positive we're doing, and it's good. And we also thought that, or just thinking about this methodology, that the transferability of this model is quite doable for other disciplines. For example, I know colleagues that have implemented the same method in criminology, in biomedical engineering. So at level 6 module, I think research is a very good thing. I know research students want to know the research side of their academics, even from year 1. But of course, in the last year of the module, they are more prepared for, working in a deeper way, like reading this kind of research papers, really understanding what they mean, just extracting the information they need, etc. So I think it can be used quite easy in other topics. And the main conclusions is like, first, the students are really happy, they really perform, they learn from real problems, they really get the global idea of SDGs more than reading beautiful sentences, nice intentions. No, it's a philosophy in your work, in your life as a consumer, as a student, as everything. So I think it is coming. It contributes to the student attributes and of course makes the academic very happy. I think that's important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pilar. If we just keep questions to the end, I'm going to move swiftly to Dr. Suzanne Power, who is from the School of Hospitality, Tourism Management. So Suzanne, over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I've taken a slightly different approach, as in then I wanted to focus on one particular piece of research that I've done and how I'm using that piece of research in my teaching. So my name is Dr. Suzanne Power. I go by Susie. Please, everybody call me Susie. I'm a senior lecturer in sustainable tourism and hospitality at Ulster University Business School, and I also chair the faculty's sustainability committee since 2022. So I've been at Ulster since 2018. The research I'm talking about is this piece, which I published together last year in June in Tourism Management, which is actually the highest ranked journal in our discipline, and it's called A Longitudinal Analysis of Judgment Approaches to Sustainability Paradoxes. Published this with my co-authors Maria Laura Di Domenico and Graham Miller from the University of Surrey and Nova Business School in Portugal, respectively. Essentially, what we've done is we confronted tourism leaders in sustainable tourism, so business practitioners who have very high-ranking roles, so they may be CEOs of big companies or otherwise sort of leaders in the field, in the industry, with certain sustainability paradoxes, and we ask them their reaction and how they make sense of these paradoxes. And we did that over a course of 8 years. So we asked them in 2014, and then we asked them again in 2022, because there'd been a lot of different things happened during this time with COVID and over tourism and the acceleration of the climate crisis. And then we interpreted how they made sense of these dilemmas. And these sustainability paradoxes, they relate to those 3 SDGs there. So the first one was the question of, can tourism ever be really sustainable if people continue to fly? The second one is sustainability in tourism compromised by the need to provide good customer experiences. And the third one was about growth. If perpetual tourism growth is not sustainable, how can we meet everyone's right to travel? So that was the research. It was great fun. As I said, it was published in the highest ranking journal, and we've presented at numerous conferences. And then I thought, well, what do I do with this now? I don't want to let this go to waste. And I decided that I will embed it into my teaching. So obviously, we always think about our key competences and that are required for ESD. So the UNESCO competences are here. Blue, the ones on head, knowing, green, the ones on doing, and in purple, the ones on being, heart. And I've sort of highlighted the ones that are relevant to this research. I've also looked at the Ulster graduate attributes, although I didn't include all 13 there. I've just picked some that are relevant to this. And AACSB is accreditation that we're in the business school are going for, and there are also certain competencies for societal leadership. So I've always been thinking about what are the key competences our students need to have. Now, what I've done, I'm going to give you 2 examples of how I have actually used this research in my teaching. The first one is a module called Contemporary Issues in Hospitality Management, which I teach. It's a level 6 module or level 8 for our colleagues from the Republic in the degree program of International Hospitality Management. And I've devised the following learning and teaching activity. So there are 3 sessions, consecutive sessions. The first one is about sustainable hospitality business, and I give a lecture. The second session is on hospitality and net zero, and I give another lecture. And the third session is about hospitality and post-growth, so looking at growth and over-tourism. And again, I give a lecture. But then in the seminar, so we have a 2-hour lecture, sort of activities, and then we have a seminar. So what I do in the seminar is I divide the students up into pairs or small groups, depending on how many are in the year group this year. and I get them to look at my research. So they have to read the paper before they come to class. And then I get them to discuss in small groups one of the sustainability paradoxes. And they have to prepare a 3-minute position statement. And they have to choose one student from their group to present the pitch. So in the first session, I pose one of the dilemmas, which is sustainability in hospitality compromised by the need to provide good customer experience? That relates to SDG 8 and also SDG 12 actually, and to one of the dilemmas there. Then the second one is, can hospitality ever be really sustainable if travelers continue flying to holiday destinations? And then the last one, perpetual growth. So I actually ask them the same dilemmas, the same paradoxes that I asked in my research. And then this is linked to an assessment. Now, the assessment that they have for this module, one of the two, they have two assessments, is first one is they have to prepare a 3-minute position statement, which they have to deliver without notes or guidance, without a PowerPoint presentation. It's a pitch. And they have to prepare this about one contemporary issue in hospitality, and they can choose whichever one. So the assignment, the teaching and learning activity that I have devised over these 3 weeks, that gives the students the opportunity to, first of all, well, read my paper, which they hopefully enjoy, but also critically explore a sustainability paradox. So they're able to choose any one of the 3 paradoxes for the assessment, though they can also choose another topic if they want to. They're then able to practice during these 3 seminars to prepare a concise position statement, and they're also able to practice in front of an audience. So these seminars are really almost like dry runs of the actual assignment, where the pitches, they happen in week 11. And they can do this in front of an audience, and they get peer feedback and tutor feedback in a non-assessed supportive environment before it gets serious then in week 11. So just to link that to the research teaching Nexus, so the lectures where I talk about this are obviously research-led. They hear about the research that I have undertaken and other academics have undertaken. The paradoxes, the seminars then are a combination of these 3. So they are research tutored, they're exploring a sustainability paradox. They have to do this in small groups, they have to research it themselves. They have to prepare this position statement, which is the research-based doing element. And then they have to actually teach their other peers about what they've done and how they've done it. So this research teaching element. And the assessment task is to prepare a 3-minute position statement there. And this again is based on the assessment requires them to explore, do, and teach research. And there's Amy, who did that in December very successfully. She talked about food waste as one, that was her topic that she chosen, and she's chosen that on the back of the second dilemma, which is about consumer or customer experiences and vis-a-vis sustainability. So that was fantastic, and they all did really, really well. And our course directors here posting about it, very nice. The second example, I'll be very quick here because I'm mindful of time, is at master level. This is a new module called Operationalizing Sustainable Tourism, so level 7 or level 9, respectively. And in there, I've designed the module as follows, and it has in the integrated learning outcome, it actually says to critically interrogate sustainability paradoxes that emerge through operationalizing, I can't say this, sustainable tourism and produce management guidance. So I've actually built the module around my own research. And what's going to happen there is that we will have workshops where students will have the opportunity to work on solution-oriented sustainability paradoxes case studies and to apply their theoretical and conceptual learning. And the assessment task here is what we call a sustainability paradoxes hackathon. So they will be put in groups and they have to prepare a 4,500 word group report on their investigation of each of these sustainability paradoxes which they take from my research, the management recommendations, a critical reflection of the paradox of extant theory and academic literature, but also then a short individual statement by each group member reflecting on the urgency, importance of the paradox. So I've actually used my research to design this module. And just on the research and learning nexus or research teaching nexus, you can see here the module outcome is linked to listening, exploring, trying, and doing research. The teaching activity is then about exploring, trying, and doing, and the assessment task is all about trying, doing, and owning research, because they then end up producing this report. This module hasn't happened yet because this is a brand new course. We're gonna do it next February for the first time, but we've received really positive feedback about this course validation, and particularly the sustainability hackathon assessment was very, very highly commended by our external assessors for the validation. And I think that is all I have to say.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Susie. We have a few minutes left, but I'm going to hand over to Kieran, who's going to explain the QR code. Hopefully you can see it there appearing, the slide.
Yes, just very quickly, folks, we'd love to hear from all our attendees today. Have you any examples of integrating research and teaching for sustainability? Have you faced any challenges? Because that will be very helpful in us shaping maybe future webinars or any resources or anything that we produce. And if you have any general other comments or feedback for ourselves, for our presenters, and if you'd like to get in touch or have any interesting collaborations, please do leave details of that. So there's a QR code that you can scan, or I'm just going to pop the link in the chat and then hand back to Mark for the Q&A session.
Great, thanks, Kieran. So we'll leave that up on the screen actually, so people can scan it in. So one question that was put in the chat, and was for Pilar there, it was about the peer-to-peer grading activity, and just the query was, is that done in a face-to-face setting where the students are working together? So
Yeah, it takes usually two lecturing sessions, and it's like in the class, in the lecturing time, and it's all face-to-face. Of course, when I collect all the marking schemes, what I will do is to put all together, just double check there is no like crazy things that usually they're not, like all zeros or all tens, and filter a little bit the feedback in the sense that everything is appropriate, constructive, and using the positive way of giving feedback. And then I will elaborate little reports and give them the feedback and the marks very quickly.
thanks, Pilar. And what's sort of really interesting with it is there's lots of examples across everyone of sort of democratic assessment where the student had an input into the selection, whether it's data sets or the topic areas. And I think that's sort of a theme that jumped out at me across the presentations. Okay, primarily the overarching theme is research, teaching, sort of nexus, but actually you have that sort of input from the students, which I think is really, really important as well. Another thing that sort of struck me is that, and this is for Amanda maybe to finish, because it's at a higher level, like you went at the quality assurance from the very beginning, which is sort of interesting because obviously it has the most power. Like, was there a lot of thought put into that, or was it just seemed obvious, like the obvious thing to do in the beginning?
I think, Mark, given my role as an academic developer, we are all about quality enhancement, and quality assurance is an important part of that. It seemed very obvious, and I talked about that critical mass. If we rely just on colleagues who have an interest in sustainability, then you may just reach a minority. This was a way through the revalidation process, to ensure that we were reaching that critical mass. So it just so happened that development of our integrated curriculum design framework was happening at the same time. So there was along the way, I think, a bit of serendipity and of things happening and emerging, which was really helpful. But for me, it is always about being proactive, and horizon scanning and seeing things coming down the track that maybe hadn't at that stage quite emerged as the sector priority that it now is.
Great, thanks. And just one final thing, and then we'll finish. Pilar, just a follow-on question was, like, what are the standard class sizes you're dealing with those sort of peer-to-peer reviews? How many students are in the classes?
Well, usually it's the whole cohort of MEC 501 that is between 40 and 50 usually.
Okay. And
I also encourage everybody to be present, because they will have to listen to everybody and assess everybody, right? And so that's and the engagement is great.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. Look, I just want to thank everybody. Thank Amanda, Kieran, Pilar, Raymond, and Susie for the presentations. It was, really interesting, very eclectic across different disciplines, but had a sort of foundational theme going through the whole lot. So Ulster University can relax now. Their session is done. Next week, we're going to have University College Cork. So hopefully everyone will join us for that. And just to thank you for all the people who logged on today, and thank you to Ulster University. So thanks very much.
And thank you, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to come and share this externally. And thanks everyone for coming along as well. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye.